Hello everyone. If you love heartwarming animal stories and want to follow the inspiring journey of these adorable friends, don't forget to hit the subscribe button now so you won't miss any of our videos. Now, let's dive into today's emotional story. The town of Ridgewood, nestled between rolling hills and golden wheat fields, was the kind of place where time moved slowly. Life here was peaceful, predictable, until the day everything changed. At the heart of Ridgewood lived the Carter family, a humble trio made up of James, a dedicated firefighter, Laura, a schoolteacher, and their bright, curious 9-year-old daughter, Anna. Their small home, with its flower-lined walkway and wooden porch swing, always seemed to radiate warmth. But what truly made their house feel like home was Bruno, their faithful German shepherd. Bruno had been part of the Carters' lives for almost a decade. James had found him as a tiny, trembling puppy on a cold winter night, abandoned near the wreckage of a burning warehouse. From that moment on, Bruno became family, not just a pet, but a guardian, a protector, and Anna's best friend. They were inseparable. Every morning, Bruno walked Anna to school, waiting patiently by the entrance gates until the final bell rang. In the afternoons, he would sit by the fence, tail wagging, ears perked, watching for his favorite person to return. Their bond was unbreakable, built on trust, loyalty, and a love deeper than words. But sometimes, love wasn't enough to stop the inevitable. It began on a stormy autumn afternoon. The day had been gray and overcast, but by evening, the weather took a turn for the worse. Dark clouds rolled in over Ridgewood, heavy with rain. Thunder rumbled in the distance as streetlights flickered on. The sidewalks, usually filled with children playing, were eerily empty. That evening, Anna stayed late at school for a book fair. By the time she stepped outside, most of the students had already gone home. Clutching her new books to her chest, she pulled her coat tighter around her small frame. Bruno, as always, was waiting for her. But tonight, something was different. He wasn't wagging his tail or pacing excitedly. He stood completely still, his posture rigid, ears pressed forward, eyes locked on something in the distance. A low, almost inaudible growl rumbled from deep within his chest. Anna hesitated. "Bruno," she whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. Bruno's gaze remained fixed ahead. And that's when she saw it. A dark figure, tall and hunched, was standing at the far end of the street, just beyond the glow of the street lamp. His face was obscured by the collar of his heavy coat, and though he wasn't moving, Anna had the terrifying feeling that he was watching her. Her heartbeat quickened. She took an instinctive step back, but Bruno suddenly moved in front of her, blocking her path. His growl deepened, a warning to whoever was out there. For a long, agonizing moment, no one moved. Then, the figure shifted. Slowly, almost deliberately, he took a step toward them. Bruno snapped. With a sudden, ferocious bark, he lunged forward, pulling at his leash, his teeth bared in a display of pure, unwavering protection. His deep growls echoed through the empty street, a sound that sent chills down Anna's spine. The figure stopped. Then, just as quickly as he had appeared, he turned and disappeared into the night. Anna stood frozen, clutching Bruno's leash so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded in her chest. What had just happened? Had that man been following her? She didn't have time to think. A strong gust of wind sent leaves swirling around her feet, and she realized she was still standing in the middle of the street, alone, except for Bruno. "Come on, boy," she whispered, her voice shaky. Bruno didn't move at first. He stared into the darkness, his ears still alert, his breath heavy. Only when Anna gently tugged at his collar did he finally obey, but his body remained tense the entire way home. By the time they reached the Carter house, the rain had started to fall in cold, heavy droplets. Anna rushed inside, shivering, but Bruno refused to relax. Even after James came home from his shift at the firehouse, the dog remained uneasy, pacing near the front door, ears twitching at every small noise outside. "What's up with him?" James asked, watching Bruno's restless behavior. "I don't know," Laura murmured. "It's like he knows something we don't." Anna lay awake that night, staring at her ceiling, Bruno's warning growl still ringing in her ears. Something was wrong. And Bruno knew it. The morning after the encounter with the stranger, Ridgewood seemed unchanged. The sun peeked through golden autumn leaves, children biked to school, and the scent of freshly baked bread drifted from the town bakery. But Anna knew things were different. Bruno hadn't slept. All night, he had stood by the front door, growling at every small noise, his body tense. Even now, as Anna walked him to school, his usual playful energy was gone. He wasn't sniffing the ground, wagging his tail, or glancing up at her for a pat. Instead, he was guarding her. Anna felt it too, the eerie sensation that someone, somewhere, was watching her. At recess, Bruno, as always, waited by the school fence. But unlike other days, he wasn't sitting patiently. He was standing, ears sharp, watching every passing adult, every moving shadow. Anna wished she could shake off the unease, but then it happened. That afternoon, as she was heading home, the man came back. Anna had just turned onto her street when a familiar chill crawled up her spine. The feeling of being watched. Bruno sensed it first. He stopped walking. His body went rigid, and a low, threatening growl rumbled from deep within his chest. Anna's pulse spiked. She followed Bruno's gaze, and there, at the corner of the street, half hidden behind a fence, stood the man. Anna froze. He was closer than before, his heavy coat pulled tight around his frame. She couldn't see his face, but she knew he was watching her. Then, he took a step forward. Bruno lunged. With a ferocious bark, he pulled the leash from Anna's hands and charged. The man stumbled backward. The look in Bruno's eyes was one of pure fury, a protector ready to attack. The stranger turned and ran. Bruno chased him, barking furiously, forcing the man down the road until he disappeared. By the time James got home that evening, half the neighborhood had heard about what happened. Some praised Bruno, calling him a hero. Others, however, whispered concerns. A dog that aggressive? What if he snaps? What if it was just some lost traveler? It wasn't long before rumors spread. By the next morning, some parents were avoiding the Carters altogether. And then, the letter arrived from the school. Laura opened it over breakfast, and the moment her eyes scanned the page, her face turned pale. "They're banning Bruno from school property," she whispered. Anna nearly dropped her spoon. "What?" "They said it's for safety reasons." Laura swallowed hard. "Some parents are complaining about a dangerous dog near their children." Anna felt a sting of betrayal. But he's not dangerous. He was protecting me. James's jaw tightened. They can't do this. They already have, Laura murmured. Starting today, Bruno can't wait for Anna outside school anymore. The change was instant. That afternoon, Bruno wasn't there when Anna left school. Her heart ached. For the first time in years, she walked home alone. Bruno, confused and restless, sat by the front door waiting for her return. When she finally arrived, he whined and nuzzled into her, licking her face as if apologizing even though none of this was his fault. That night, Anna cried into Bruno's fur. "They don't understand, boy," she whispered. "They don't know what's out there." Bruno rested his head on her lap, his warm presence the only comfort she had left. But deep in his canine instincts, he knew the danger was far from over. And the town's betrayal was only just beginning. The weeks that followed were the loneliest Anna had ever known. Without Bruno at the school gates, she felt exposed, unprotected. Every afternoon waiting anxiously by the front door. Bruno didn't understand. He would whine when she left, pace by the window, and bark whenever anyone walked by the house. He still sensed something was wrong. Anna did. She noticed the black SUV that parked too long at the street corner. She noticed how, at night, shadows lingered under the streetlights just a little too long. And she noticed how Bruno never stopped growling at the darkness. Her parents were worried, too. James had started checking the locks more often. Laura kept the curtains drawn. But they told Anna not to worry. So she didn't tell them that, sometimes, when she was walking home, she could hear footsteps behind her, but whenever she turned, there was no one there. Then, the worst happened. It was a Saturday evening, crisp and cold, when Anna went outside to toss a ball with Bruno. She hadn't been out for 5 minutes when she heard a car door slam. And then footsteps. Fast, heavy footsteps. She turned just as a man in a black hoodie rushed toward her, a cloth in his hands. Anna barely had time to scream before Bruno exploded forward. The man didn't stand a chance. Bruno hit him like a bullet, his powerful jaws clamping onto the man's forearm. The stranger yelled in pain, stumbling backward. But Bruno didn't let go. His growls turned feral, his teeth sinking deeper. Anna scrambled away, heart racing. The man, now panicked and bleeding, kicked at Bruno, desperately trying to shake him off. Then a second man appeared from the car. And this time, he had a bat. He swung hard. The impact sent Bruno flying. He hit the pavement with a painful yelp, his body collapsing in a heap. "Bruno!" Anna screamed. She ran toward him, but the man grabbed her roughly by the arm, dragging her toward the waiting car. Her screams pierced the night. But Bruno wasn't done. Despite the pain, despite the blow, Bruno forced himself up. His legs trembled, his breathing was labored, but his eyes burned with fury. With one final burst of strength, he lunged again. He went straight for the second man, his teeth clamping onto the bat, jerking it away. Then he turned and bit down on the man's leg. The man screamed, dropping Anna. And then the flashing lights came. Sirens. Shouting. police officers rushing onto the scene. The men panicked. One tried to run, but a cop tackled him to the ground. The other, still clutching his bleeding arm, raised his hands in surrender. Bruno, body shaking, limped to Anna's side, pressing against her as if to shield her one last time. James and Laura came running. Anna. Laura collapsed beside her, pulling her into a tight embrace. James knelt next to Bruno, his hands running over the dog's battered body. "He saved me," Anna whispered. "He saved my life." James looked at Bruno, at the loyal dog who had never wavered, never backed down, never stopped protecting their family. And then, his heart broke. Because Bruno wasn't moving anymore. The night air was thick with tension as the flashing red and blue lights illuminated the quiet Ridgewood Street. Paramedics rushed forward, checking Anna for injuries, but she barely noticed them. All she could see was Bruno, lying still on the pavement. "Bruno?" Anna whispered, shaking his fur-covered body. He was breathing barely. His side rose and fell in shallow, labored gasps, his eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. James knelt beside him, running trembling hands over his battered frame. "Stay with us, boy. Just hold on," he murmured. The police officers had subdued the two men. Both were wanted criminals, involved in multiple child abduction cases in neighboring towns. They had been watching Anna for weeks. Bruno had always known. The weight of that realization made Laura's knees buckle. She had doubted him. The whole town had. And yet, he had never stopped protecting them. "We need to get him to a vet now," James barked, his voice thick with desperation. One of the officers, a K-9 handler, grabbed his radio. "I know a vet that's still open. Follow me." James scooped Bruno into his arms, ignoring the blood staining his uniform. Anna clung to her mother as they raced to the truck, whispering over and over, "Please don't leave me, Bruno. Please stay." The drive to the animal hospital felt endless. Anna sat in the back seat, her hands pressed to Bruno's fur, feeling the weak rhythm of his heartbeat. When they finally arrived, the vet team was already waiting. Dr. Evans, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice, quickly assessed him. Massive internal bruising. Possible broken ribs. Blood loss. "We need to move fast." They wheeled Bruno into surgery, the doors swinging shut behind them. And then, all they could do was wait. Hours passed. Anna sat curled in a chair, Bruno's collar clutched tightly in her hands. James paced. Laura rubbed her temples, silent tears slipping down her face. Finally, Dr. Evans emerged, her face unreadable. "He's stable," she said. A collective breath of relief filled the room. "But it was close," she continued. "His body went into shock from the trauma. If you had brought him in even a few minutes later," she shook her head, "he might not have made it." Anna exhaled a shaky breath. "Can I see him?" Dr. Evans nodded. Bruno lay on a soft bed in the recovery room, bandaged and bruised, but alive. His tail thumped weakly when he saw her. Anna sobbed with relief. She carefully knelt beside him, stroking his head, pressing her forehead against his fur. "You did it, Bruno," she whispered. "You saved me." James and Laura stood behind her, watching in awed silence. They had almost lost their daughter. If it weren't for Bruno's unwavering devotion, they might have. Laura swallowed hard, guilt weighing heavily in her chest. "We never should have doubted him," she murmured. James nodded, his jaw tight. "We'll never let him go again." 1 week later. The news of Bruno's heroism spread across Ridgewood like wildfire. The same people who had once feared him were now rallying behind him. The mayor declared Bruno a town hero, and at a special ceremony, the school revoked the ban, inviting him back to watch over Anna as he always had. Even Jessica's family, the ones who had pushed for Bruno's removal, publicly apologized. But none of that mattered to Anna. All she cared about was Bruno, finally back home, curled up at her feet like he always belonged. And this time, she knew he would never be taken away again. Because Bruno wasn't just a dog. He was her protector, her best friend, her guardian for life. The story of Bruno and Anna teaches us a powerful lesson about loyalty, trust, and the deep bond between humans and animals. In a world where fear and misunderstandings can often lead to unfair decisions, Bruno's unwavering devotion proves that true guardianship isn't always recognized until it's almost too late. His instinct to protect, despite being cast away, reflects the importance of listening to those who care for us, even when their warnings seem unfounded. In real life, we often ignore subtle signs of danger, dismissing concerns as overreactions. However, just as Bruno sensed a threat before anyone else did, we must learn to trust our instincts and the warnings of those who love us. This applies not just to pets, but also to the people in our lives, friends, family, and even community members who look out for our well-being. Bruno's story also reminds us that justice is not always immediate, but the truth will always come to light. In a society quick to judge, we must be careful not to make hasty decisions based on fear, but instead focus on understanding and fairness. Loyalty, whether from a dog or a person, should never be taken for granted. It is one of life's greatest gifts.